Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome into the Guilty as Charged podcast presented by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Steven. I am so excited for this episode. Like I always say, it's kind of a cliche at this point, but it is what it is. I'm excited to talk football with my guys, Tyler and Alex. Alex, we'll start with you, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Someone who has been to all 6 training camp practices, or all 7 by now. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun at Chargers camp.
Definitely been a fun experience. Just excited that football is back, man. I can't believe we have the Hall of Fame game coming up, I think, tomorrow. So football is back. My alma mater, University of Utah, had their first day of fall camp today. So football is in full swing. Very excited about that. Tyler is joining us as always. Tyler, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing very well. Happy to see football is back. I'm curious what the over-under is on N-words used on the Hall of Fame game, but we'll see. Oh. Mason Rudolph is starting, just for anybody who's
okay.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not.
It's a really great joke when you have to explain it.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Yeah, that's gonna be an entertaining one. I have to say, I do really hate that the Cowboys got Hard Knocks and the Hall of Fame game, and they get the season opener against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, as if the Cowboys needed more publicity, they have the 3 biggest things of the preseason. So, shout out to them. So we're going to talk about some training camp takeaways. Before we get started, Tyler and Alex both did separate videos on our YouTube channel of takeaways from the previous 2 days. So definitely go and check those out. Arjun did just release an interview with Brad Spielberger, I think his name is. PFF Brad, who is the salary cap guru for them. So definitely go check all of those out. And as always, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave us a rating and review. We always appreciate the interaction. So let's get started today. I think one of the, obviously the Mike Williams kind of stuff, it was talked about ad nauseum on Twitter. So we're not going to talk about that. But Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton were absent from practice today, which I think is notable, right? Because that gave some opportunities for some other receivers to kind of step up. Obviously, we weren't at practice today, but Tyler, you were at practice on Monday, and you got to see Austin Proehl get some more action. And I think that is kind of been one of the bigger storylines. So me and you were kind of saying on Saturday we hadn't really seen much from Proehl as a receiver. I did a roster prediction and left Proehl off and said, until we see more as a receiver, we can't really say with confidence that he's going to make the roster. And then, of course, literally the next day, we see more of him as a receiver. So what did you see from Proehl, in person? How did he look? And do you think he's going to be the kind of guy to take advantage of Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton's absence?
Yeah, absolutely. Proehl was a guy that I thought maybe had a shot to make the roster, could surprise during camp, sure. And I figured like being a returner was just kind of a bonus to his role. I didn't expect him to just outright be the kick returner 1 and punt returner 1 right out of the gate, especially with Joe Reed and KJ Hill right there. But, some people were hyping him up as a returner very early on in camp, as early as the first day where he dropped multiple punts. I'm not really sure where that came from, but he still held on to that role because everybody else dropped punts. But then, how much can you do in this offense? And, no one expected him to be anything more than at best the wide receiver 6. He's always going to be a second team kind of guy. But I was surprised to see in the padded practice how often they were targeting him with a purpose. It wasn't just like, he happened to get open on the route concept and he was like the 4th read in the progression or whatever, and they got the ball to him. And then there were some cases like that, but there were other times where they would target him immediately on a screen. I wouldn't say a swing. I don't know if it's I think it was a bubble screen or something like that, or wide receiver screen. Anyway, they were targeting with purpose, and they wanted to get him involved in space and let him be really shifty in space. And that was surprising to me. That means that they are, and I don't know how often the other receivers are doing that, but it was telling to me to see him with Chase Daniel just be targeted so frequently with intention immediately as soon as the ball was snapped. Quick passes right to him, which shows me that they're trying to find some sort of role for him on offense as well. And, again, I thought that was like a Joe Reed thing. If you want to give a guy quick passes, Joe Reed. Now, he hasn't taken any handoffs or anything, but it seems like that's kind of like if they're finding a guy who can do gadget stuff and return, it looks like it's Proehl right now. So, I currently have him making the roster, and I don't see why he wouldn't at this point unless he loses his return jobs, but he's not. He is outright the kick returner 1 and punt returner 1.
Yeah, our poor guy Joe Reed, not only potentially losing his job, he also shrunk 3 inches, apparently.
I
So,
saw that.
Alex, what do you make of Austin Proehl's kind of emergence, if you will, that we've been hearing about and seeing, of course?
Yeah, I mean, when we did that roster predictions video, I think I did predict Joe Reed to be wide receiver 6, but I'm kind of throwing that prediction out. I do
Yeah,
think
We
Austin
all are.
Proehl is pretty clearly wide receiver 6, and kind of the first special teams guy that really pops off the page, at least when it comes to returning, of course. So to me, I don't think there's much debate, and he's been pretty solid in campers. Catching from Herbert, catching from Daniel. He's shown a little bit of versatility there, and like Tyler said, I just think there's something to him where he does get a little bit more of that quick offense, a little bit more of that kind of jump to his game. That just, I mean, KJ Hill is a good slot receiver; he's all right, but like I just don't think he provides that same energy. And Joe Reed, to this point in his career, I think we've seen it in the run game, but we still just never have seen that really in the passing game from him,
yeah.
unfortunately. And that was partially just due to, availability last year and how much he was actually involved in the passing offense. So I think Joe Reed is kind of on the team. Or sorry, not Joe Reed. I
Austin
think
Proehl. Yeah.
Austin Proehl is pretty clearly on the team. I don't think there's really much debating it. Of course, a lot can change in the course of one preseason, and we've only seen a week of practices, but
Right.
I did not take the notion of Austin Proehl seriously, when we made those roster predictions. But I think he's shown you both with his special team skills and what he can do on the offense that he should be taken very, very seriously.
Yeah, I think when we were kind of making that prediction article, the thing that was kind of difficult is that, you see like the short area quickness plan with Joe Reed as a receiver. You see
Mhm.
the route running with KJ Hill. You see, the kick return ability potential with Joe Reed. And then, KJ Hill is a solid punt returner because he's got great hands, great instincts. And it just felt like they needed someone to be the combination of the two of them. And
Mhm.
so if that's Austin Proehl, man, like I think that's great. Obviously, like Alex was saying, a lot can change, right? And with these injuries to Jalen Guyton and Tyron Johnson, who knows who kind of is able to step up. Brandon Staley said that neither of those injuries are serious, and he expects both of them
Right.
back to be back at practice, this week. And the Chargers do have, 3 padded practice opportunities this week, which are huge. But I want to talk about Jalen Guyton because
Yeah.
one of the things that we've kind of talked about and the Chargers coaching staff has talked about is kind of the multiplicity, the flexibility that they like to have. And, Darius Swinton had a great quote. I'm going to, kind of butcher it, but essentially he was saying that like he likes to help players become well-rounded players. He doesn't believe in, oh, I'm just X specialist. I'm just whatever. I can't do, X, Y, and Z. And I think that shows in kind of their approach. And, the Saints were kind of that same way in terms of offensive, skill positions. They really never believed in having just one person who all they do is run really straight and they run really fast. And so, even someone like Ted Ginn, they would involve in the screen game, involved in yards after catch potential. And that's not really Jalen Guyton. Like Jalen Guyton is a burner. He's very fast, but he doesn't offer kind of the well-rounded package, as a player, the well-rounded skill set that Tyron Johnson and Josh Palmer that we're seeing from them. And now with Austin Proehl's emergence. So do we think, Alex, we'll start with you. Do you think that Jalen Guyton is still safe? Or do you think that maybe this could be kind of a way for Joe Reed to step in? Like if Joe Reed plays really great in the preseason games, is Jalen Guyton kind of the one that's going to be cut instead of it being Reed versus Proehl? Is there a world where it becomes Reed versus Guyton?
No, I don't think so. I think Guyton, the furthest I would drop him is like wide receiver 5. Like I think that's really the furthest he can fall. I don't see Proehl leaping him. I think the way that Proehl kind of makes this roster again is on the back end of that receiving group. And as one-dimensional as Jalen Guyton might be, it is a pretty important dimension to be
Yeah.
able to just run really fast and go really straight. The drops are obviously a problem, and he does kind of have to still work on that. but I do still think he's kind of essential to this team. Now, what his role ends up being, I'm not exactly sure. I do think Tyron Johnson, based on these first couple days and how the coaching staff used their receivers, has pretty clearly leaped him. But, I do think that the coaching staff, as much as we talk about like multiplicity and they do like that, Joe Lombardi also had guys in New Orleans that were like, okay, we're going to run what you're comfortable with, right?
Yeah.
Robert Meacham was not the most, varied receiver, right? In terms of what he could do, but like they were like, all right, just do what you do, right? So I do think that is not that I'm saying it's necessarily comparable to Jalen Guyton. There are different situations, but in terms of what they do, they are a little bit more one dimensional than say Keenan Allen or some of these other guys that we talk about like Tyron Johnson and the potential that he has. So. I still think Guyton makes the team. Reed, I just need to see more from Reed for him to really be able to push that far up. And it seems like it's really Reed versus Proehl for that last wide receiver spot, for the special teams and all that. So, yeah.
Interesting. I didn't really think of it. I obviously going into the season did not think of it as Guyton versus Reed. It was always Reed versus the other wide receiver 6 or whoever else.
Right.
But who would you rather have on the roster at that point? Like, I don't know. Like, again, my expectations and my thought process about what Joe Reed is, I would probably keep on the roster over Guyton, I'd think. But it's not been that way. Guyton's taken more first team reps than Tyron
Right.
Johnson, whereas Joe Reed can barely, scratch anything in this offense right now. But, who would I keep? They're going to keep Guyton. But I am interested in seeing what they do when the play calls and the concepts start to get a little bit more advanced, a little bit more complex. Yeah. Not that either Reed or Guyton are doing anything all that advanced, but I'm curious who the guy is going to be who possibly takes on the Deebo Samuel run game, jet sweep, whatever dimension of the 49ers run game that they're possibly going to emulate. Because Guyton, look, he took 2 handoffs last year and Reed took 5. So it's not like there's a big gap
right.
Where, no one has a clear lead. But,
right.
I'd actually be curious to see who kind of, because those 2 guys are kind of your burners, I guess. Like Mike Williams is a 4.5, I think. I think Palmer was like a 4.5 guy. Guyton's a 4.39, I think. So, between those 2 guys, who is more of your gadget guy at this point in the offense, if not Proehl? So I'd be curious to see how it goes down to, but I'm pretty sure Guyton's sticking around.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I expect him to be cut by any means. Just to be clear, I just am kind of looking at it as maybe they look at this emergence of Tyron Johnson and look at maybe him and Jalen Guyton kind of being a little redundant, because I don't think you lose any speed when you're going from Guyton to Joe Reed. I think Guyton was a 4.39 and Reed was like a 4.42, so it's not like a significant speed decrease. I'm just kind of thinking like, they've been talking about all these, options that they like to have and all the flexibility. And so in my mind, I'm thinking like, okay, maybe that is a way for Reed to kind of stick on the roster. Of course, he would have to play well and earn his spot, right? But, like if I'm looking at Joe Reed playing really well and Jalen Guyton playing well, like I could maybe see a world in which they choose Joe Reed. And of course, there's also the draft capital. Joe Reed was just drafted and Jalen Guyton was an undrafted free agent. So just was kind of spitballing an idea there.
Right. No, I can see what you're saying. Now, on the speed thing, I will push back a little bit because Jalen Guyton ran a 4.35 and Joe Reed was closer to a 4.47 and a 4.5 when he ran.
All right. My mistake.
I don't think it's a big deal. Like I see what you're saying, but I do think there is kind of a speed element there. Then again, like what we talked about with Joe Reed coming out of college was okay, but he's a better route runner than somebody like Jalen Guyton, right? But the coaching staff has commented a bunch of times like he doesn't know where to line up when he runs routes. So I don't know how that factors in, and he couldn't jump into the offense last year, right? So I see what you're saying, and I definitely think Reed can still compete for this roster just due to the offensive skills that he has. But, to me, I do still think he's really competing for that last wide receiver spot as opposed to really ascending.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other roster conversation that I wanted to have today is with the edge rushers, because I think there's been some significant buzz about, several players. Kyler Fackrell having a larger role, which we talked about last time. Chris Rumpf had a really good day today, and he made some plays on Saturday when we were there at practice. And Emeke Egbule has been making some plays as well. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, initially all three of us had just the 4 edge rushers making the roster. Maybe we had Egbule as listed as a linebacker or something like that. But if I remember correctly, and you guys can obviously correct me, I think we just had, Bosa.
I think we had him making the roster.
Oh, we did? Okay. So I wasn't sure about that one. But has anything changed, I guess, is my question in terms of the pecking order? Because I think the top 3 is safe, right? But,
yeah,
do you think that Egbule could kind of carve out a more significant role this year? Obviously, he didn't really have much of a role last year at all. But I guess my question is, how are you viewing the Chris Rumpf versus Emeke Egbule position battle for edge rusher 4? Alex, we'll start with you on this one.
I haven't been at camp, so like I haven't really seen kind of what their reps are like from down to down. Unfortunately, well, it sort of is a cop out. I think that when we did their roster episode, I think I had Egbule as a kind of linebacker spot, and then you sort of really put him at edge. But then you guys convinced me, and we're like, oh, well, they need depth at these positions, and then I took Egbule out. So I think that's how we ended. I think that's how we ended that episode. So we had the right point, and then we talked ourselves out of it, like we usually do. So I would say Egbule. I think Egbule can carve out a role for himself. I think pretty clearly the top 2 rushers are still Bosa and Wosu, and then Fackrell. I do think will have a large role. And then so that's Fackrell is probably kind of like the tier 2. And then I think the tier 3 guys can be Rumpf and Egbule, if you kind of want to break it down like that. So, I'm not going to like predict he's going to be a breakout player or anything, just because we've probably already done that with too many guys. So I'm not going to go there, but I think he could be a solid contributor when called upon.
Yeah, I think we discussed whether he could be a breakout player or not, because somebody asked us, and like, not really. Like, it would take a lot of dead chargers in front of him for him to really step onto the field and have significant snaps. But they need to evaluate him, because either A, both or one of Nwosu and Fackrell are gone, and they're going to need someone to take their spots, or 2, they're going to keep a guy like Nwosu around who does have a health history issue, and if you keep him around, you want to know that the guys behind him are also kind of decent at least. So Egbule definitely needs to get a shot. I hope he does well in the preseason. I'm pretty sure we had him sticking around. I had him sticking around. He's sticking around in my current roster prediction. So yeah, I think he sticks around, and his role on special teams is going to help with that, of course. But I as far as breaking out, like not really. Like, I don't see much from him. As far as Egbule versus Rumpf, it seems like they're kind of letting the veterans kind of go first, see what's up. And then kind of slowly bring on the rookies. Rumpf, I'm not gonna say he hasn't stood out, but I don't think anyone's had, like, he hasn't been the rookie or rookies that the people have been raving about so far. But I think come preseason that'll change. And at some point I think Rumpf's athleticism and just his natural stuff is going to outshine Egbule. But I still think they're going to keep 5 guys. I don't think either is in danger of losing their spot. I just think it's whoever starts as the backup.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some other members of the rookie class in a second. But, I think Daniel Popper pointed out yesterday, I believe, that, both Egbule and Rumpf are going to be kind of core special teams players, which obviously, adds to their value in terms of making the roster. And, like Tyler or like Alex said, they do need depth, like with, I guess Tyler kind of mentioned it too, right? Because you have Bosa and Nwosu both have a history of health issues, and so you need that depth, right? And so I think Egbule is in kind of that position where Nwosu was after his rookie season, where you kind of didn't know if he was a linebacker or an edge rusher. And Gus Bradley's and his staff really didn't know how to use him. And he is a versatile player, but sometimes versatility can be that double-edged sword where it's like, okay, we don't really know what he is though. So it seems like he's going to be a full-time edge rusher in this defense. I think his background as a linebacker can absolutely help him, in coverage situations, which we know the edge rushers are going to be doing in this offense. So I do expect Egbule to make the roster as well. So the other thing that happened was that KJ Costello, the quarterback out of Stanford and Mississippi State, did sign with the Chargers. Alex did write an article for Bolt Beat about that, so obviously go check that out. But I guess, we want to talk about him versus Easton Stick, maybe potentially keeping just the two quarterbacks, which again, Alex did point out as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Tyler and the coaching staff, to be clear, like they are saying all the right things. Like they are saying that they like Easton Stick, that this is a legitimate quarterback competition. Where does KJ Costello fit in for you? And where does Easton Stick fit in on the roster? Because I think we had the three quarterbacks making the roster back then. So kind of update us on your predictions now and how KJ Costello could potentially change that.
Yeah, I was not in favor of Easton Stick making the roster. I get it. And honestly, maybe it would be back then, at least you could probably predict they didn't make the roster, but I'm against it. Like, I don't want that extra quarterback. The team's screwed either way. If we're getting a QB3, I really don't care. Put me there out there at a quarterback. They're still going to win as many games probably. Yeah. But as far as KJ Costello goes, I was able to watch him a little bit because I was watching Kylan Hill and I was kind of impressed by how he got the back involved in the passing game. But that's kind of like the breadth of my knowledge on him. But I will say, and again, this is kind of stupid, but it feels like a very old school approach. The dude looks like a quarterback. Like he stepped onto the field and I'm going, who is that? Like this guy walks out with the rest of the quarterbacks. I'm like, oh, that's a dude. And to be completely honest, if you're going to be developing a guy on the practice squad in the hopes of, maybe trading him one day, taking a guy who's a physically imposing 6'5", 220 or whatever he is, that is young and kind of unknown with some tantalizing traits, making him work in the preseason, I think that's the route to go. I don't think Stick or Costello make the roster anyway. But if I'm going to keep a guy, I kind of go with the more interesting looking Costello, if you will, because I just think there's something there that I think another team could possibly bite on, whereas Stick is either, damaged goods or known goods that aren't that good anyway. So I'm in favor of keeping Costello as the practice squad QB3.
Yeah, I'm fine with whatever quarterback they choose to be QB3 / practice squad. I think it has to be practice squad at this point, frankly, just because I think Herbert and Daniel have proven themselves to be, above everybody else. I mean, Herbert is QB1. I think Daniel has really pulled away from the pack. Like, I don't think it's particularly close at this point. Costello is interesting just because I think, he did throw 43 touchdowns and 15 interceptions in his first 2 years. Like, he was a solid quarterback.
Yeah, he was good at Stanford.
He was really good. And then the injuries happened, unfortunately, in 2019. And then 2020, while COVID is going on, he's going to a new school with a new coach and the completely different Mike Leach offense than he was used to. And unfortunately, threw 6 touchdowns and 10 interceptions prior to getting benched. And so, I got a lot of Stick fans being like, oh, well, he threw 6 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. So that means he's bad at football because, we all go to Pro Sports Reference and then just pick out the stats. I think he's an interesting prospect just because if you can get back what his form was, those first 2 years at Stanford, that's an interesting developmental guy. Is a little bit older now, right? Like that's kind of the only thing, I don't know if he's really going to grow in some significant area. But interesting one to keep around. I don't really favor one between Stick and Costello. I can definitely see where Tyler's, talking about which one has the more interesting attributes. I do think that's probably Costello, but could you make the argument that, Stick has been on, an NFL team for the last 2 years? I think that's helped him a little bit too. Again, we're talking about QB3 in the practice squad, and I'm just so exhausted of this whole conversation when we should be talking about Herbert or Daniel. So I'm a little bit of a broken, record at this point, but I'm fine with either of them getting the practice squad spot as long as it's not QB3 on the active roster.
Come on, the Drummond signing wasn't that bad, man.
Oh man, I love it. That's so funny. I saw that they had this video of the two of them hugging, and it was that side hug where you hate the person.
Yeah, Embiid gave him the opposite of sex eyes. If you've seen that clip, it's the polar opposite.
Yeah, it was funny though, but I do agree that I don't have a preference, right? I think that Stick and Costello are frankly they're two different quarterbacks. I think Costello has some intriguing traits, and I think he probably is a little more further along in his mental capacity of the game. I think watching some of his film this past week, and I can totally see why this coaching staff is, interested in him, right? He makes smart decisions. He's tough in the pocket. He's flexible in the pocket. He's not the best athlete. He doesn't have the strongest arm, but he makes it work, throws with anticipation, reads defense as well. So I can totally see why they like him. I can also really see why they like Easton Stick, which Brandon Staley did say in his press conference today. He's a great athlete at the position. He's very mobile, has a strong arm. It's just the mental side of things. Like when you watch Chase Daniel out there versus Easton Stick, like Daniel is just so much more comfortable back there. He reads the defense, reads the progressions, and he knows where he's going. And you can always tell that Easton Stick is like half second late. And that's not his fault. Like, he didn't have a preseason last year. He didn't get any reps. And so like this is an important time for him to get these reps and get this development. But, it's just kind of unfortunate for him that he doesn't really have what he has needed in terms of those repetitions. So I don't really care who they keep. I know a lot of people are going to say, you guys hate Easton Stick, but I don't really care. Like, I just want whoever they keep to be on the practice squad because I want that extra roster spot for, a player that's going to make a difference. Like we talked on Saturday about Steven Anderson, and of course we interviewed him, and so we might be a little partial towards him. But I would rather have that fourth tight end who can play like an H-back role and give me some blocking, give me some special teams, or have that, sixth linebacker or sixth safety or sixth corner or whatever, they decide to do with that extra spot. But I want that extra spot. And that really is the only thing. I don't see any reason to keep Stick or Costello on the active roster because it wastes a spot.
I will say one of the things this coaching staff did that looking back in retrospect, I'm not particularly fond of was framing this as a Stick versus Daniel competition, because I think we're just at the point where that was really never the case. I mean, Daniel is a guy that's played in, up to 70 NFL games, and Stick hasn't played a football game in 2 years, right? And was drafted 2 years ago. So, I think framing it in that context was always a bit unfair to Stick, just because, he could be still QB3 or a practice squad guy. So I think that, now that we're establishing that Daniel is pretty clearly the QB2, maybe reframing it into this Stick Costello context makes it a little bit more interesting and something we can actually kind of get something out of, right, in terms of who's going to be the QB3 if they decide to go that route, or who's going to be kind of the practice squad representative.
Yeah, I guess we'll see in the preseason. At this point, just get rid of all the Stick stands on Twitter, and I'm happy.
You really hate him.
God.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I'm about the team and what's best for the team. I don't really, I would never stand for a player. Like, I don't know. That just seems a little weird to me. I want the team to do well. Why would I care? Why do I care about the third quarterback on the roster? Like, just let the team win.
I hope a player from Utah joins the Chargers, and you have to back that up one day.
Hey, Sam Tebby was on the team, man, and I was never like, Sam Tebby has to be a starter. Like,
true.
So
true. You've been kind to him, but you haven't stand him. That's true. You're right.
Can you imagine if Matt Gay was in this kicker battle? I mean,
that is the one thing. That is the one thing. But should we talk about the kickers again, or are we good?
No,
the kicker turf. I don't think we've
it's
really
pretty
seen
close.
Yeah.
Let me see in the preseason.
I saw Kessman make 5 field goals today, and he made like 2 50-yarders. So Kessman gang, rise up. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I think Daniel Popper said that Kessman and Vescaino are each like 9 for 10 on field goals so far, and then Badgley is like 10 for 12. So Badgley's going to get every chance to prove that he can stay on this roster, but I do expect it to be someone else.
I saw Badgley made a 41-yarder today, so we're increasing that distance 1 yard at a time. From that 40-yard range.
And you know what, Alex? I think 10 for 12 is above 82.5%. So I'm going to win that money based on the preseason so far.
Yeah, he's not making the team.
Well,
you win some, you lose.
All right. Well, let's talk about one of the more exciting topics, I think, in my opinion, and that is the emergence of this rookie class so far in training camp. Tyler, of course, did a wonderful video and talked about some of those players after Monday's video, but each practice, we're hearing more and more about this rookie class. And I know everybody was very worried about, like, well, where's Asante Samuel Jr.? Where's Asante Samuel Jr.? He's there now. Like, he is getting reps with the ones. He had some great plays apparently today and on Monday. So it's been a really good week for him. Mark Webb continues to make plays in practice as well. Of course, we've talked about Josh Palmer, and then Rashawn Slater, my guy that I got to talk about. I think I might have to adjust my expectations, man. Like, I think we might be looking at, a potential Tristan Wirfs type impact. Like, I was expecting, most of these players to kind of ease into things and, there being an adjustment period, a learning period. But all of this rookie class, really outside of like Larry Roundtree and Nick Neiman, we've heard a bunch of buzz about all of them. So there's, that is very significant. They need multiple of these players to really come in and make impacts. And I love that we are hearing about Rashawn Slater dominating one-on-ones and Josh Palmer scoring red zone touchdowns and Asante Samuel Jr. getting a red zone interception, getting pass breakups. Mark Webb has an interception, a pick six. So, I mean, Tyler, you were there on Monday. What are you seeing from these rookies overall? And have your expectations changed for any of them?
Have my expectations changed for any of them? Not Mark Webb, yes. I will say, like, Slater, like, he is my OT too. I think he'd be pretty good left tackle. We all love Asante Samuel Jr. Not a huge surprise. I didn't know much about Josh Palmer, but he seems to be pretty as advertised. Although he's like doing everything really well right now, which is, I wouldn't say a surprise, but the fact that he's standing out so much is pretty cool. But Mark Webb, man, like, I did not expect him to come in and just like he might be the best rookie performer right now. Like, I don't think he'll have as big of an impact, but like, it seems like every single day he's been multiple pass breakups, interceptions, doing exactly what he needs to. And that does make me feel so much better about the safety group. And granted, it's practice. It ain't a real game. It's not against, you're going against these same guys all the time. But for him to pick it up so quickly makes me feel really good. And as far as the class goes, one of the things I loved about the class in general was most of these guys are former, 3-star recruits. And again, these guys are still amazing in the country. They're not like 3-star recruits a bad thing, but all these guys went from being, generally a 3-star recruit to being drafted in the NFL. And that tells me something that, like, wherever you come from, and maybe not like the highest ranking, but they worked their way to overachieve, if you will, based on their ranking. And so for them to all enter camp, as soon as the pads come on, like, the one thing you can't measure watching the tape is the character of these players and the fortitude and the learning and everything like that. And to see that all these guys have basically shown up to camp. I mean, Rashawn Slater, like, he lost 1 rep to Nwosu in the run game. But like I said, as soon as that play was over, they go to the next pass rep, and he wins that against Nwosu. And then I don't remember if there was actually a whistle or not, but basically through the whistle, he just turns and just shoves Nwosu as hard as he possibly can to give him some attitude. And I just love that. Asante Samuel Jr. always had the moxie, but he's bringing that to the team. It's such a confident class. And for them to all walk, not all, but like most of them have walked in and performed pretty well so far. It's actually kind of shocking, to be honest. Like, I liked the class. I think I gave it an A- overall. It's kind of not surprising that Roundtree and McKitty are the least talked about right now in terms of positivity. I think Neiman was slightly behind, but he did have a sack, I believe, today.
Yeah.
But the class overall is looking pretty good. So I'm very happy with it. I can't wait to see them play other opponents.
Yeah, I've been really excited about the class, and Josh Palmer has to kind of be my favorite out of the group right now. Like, I think that he, I expected him to be good, and I liked the pick at the time more so than some people on Twitter. But, he's really just like flashed that. I just said I won't talk about route running, but he's really flashed that route running ability. He's got a lot of.
Do they do that?
To him. Yeah. Sometimes the receivers do that. But yeah, so I really like what I've seen from Josh Palmer, and I think he's gonna be. I think Tyron is kind of the wide receiver 3 this year still. But I think he's gonna be pushing him. Especially if some team offers Tyron a bunch of money next year, right? And he leaves potentially in that restricted free agency kind of thing. Then you could have Josh Palmer really as your wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 2, right? Depending on what happens with Mike Williams. So I think that his stock is way up. Rashawn Slater, of course, being dominant, not exactly a surprise, but I didn't expect him to be as dominant as he was with the pads. Of course, like Steven said, going 4 for 4 is going 4 for 4. Like that was a really great, display by him. Asante really cracking that first team lineup. There was a little bit of concern with Faison, but then, Faison got burnt quite a few times by Tyron Johnson. And I feel like that discussion might be starting to be in the past, but again, we'll see how that develops. But yeah, really everyone except, McKitty, but his game is not really like a, super sexy game to watch anyway, right? It's a bit more of like a gritty blocking game, right? And then, obviously James is not really, is he in the scrimmages at all? Was he there? I don't know.
So Popper and a bunch of others have said that he's mostly in the third team in terms of offensive line, and then occasionally rotates in with the second team. Like there was, I believe on Monday or maybe it was yesterday, Corey Linsley took a couple of plays off, and so Questenberry went up to the first team, and then James went up to the second team. So, he's going to have to earn it. Like that's another one that I should have mentioned. Like there hasn't been much about James, and that's okay. He's going to make the roster. Like they just drafted him. So,
right.
Yeah. I think just in general, like if you have 4 or 5 people, let's say 4 that can really be instant contributors, like that's a successful draft, right?
Yeah, totally.
If Neiman comes along kind of later in the year and is contributing on special teams, or we see more from Roundtree, then that's great, but I think as of now they have 3.5 to 4.5 contributors depending on kind of which guys step up and which guys don't. But I'm pretty happy with the rookie class so far, like Tyler said.
Yeah, it's been so exciting. Like we're so used to this old school mentality where rookies have to earn it. And even Derwin James, I barely remember hearing anything about him at training camp.
He was hurt.
Okay, that makes sense too. But you know what I mean? We're just used to
Totally.
You never hear about the rookies. They've got to earn it. There's nothing about them really unless they're really flashing and dominating. But these rookies are all getting opportunities to shine in their own kind of way. And the Chargers need that. Mark Webb, we've been so, I don't want to say worried, but kind of, skeptical of, we've been worried about the safety depth for, all summer long. And, until we saw, Alohi Gilman and Mark Webb kind of step up, that was going to be an issue. But it seems like, Webb is really coming into his own. And he really is being cross-trained apparently, at deep safety, at star in the slot, and then Money as that dime linebacker. So they have a plan for him, and that's exciting. But there was so much offensive line stuff, the offensive line sucks, and then the first day of pads, man, literally the first day of pads, Rashawn Slater goes boom, 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 boom. And obviously, I wish I would have been there, and I wish I would have been able to see it, and I wish we could have seen some videos of that. But the way that the beat writers framed it, man, it looked like Rashawn Slater was truly dominant. And that's just so exciting. The Chargers have been such just a, offensive line, terrible state of mind, for the longest time. And, this year, it genuinely feels like it's going to be different this year across the board for the team in general, but specifically for the offensive line. If Rashawn Slater plays at or close to his ceiling and Corey Linsley plays at or close to his ceiling, that's a better situation than the Chargers have had just right there since Nick Hardwick and Marcus McNeil. They truly have 2 players who are going to be above average at their position. And then if everybody else is just solid above average, that's, a top 15 to 18 offensive line right there. Of course, they've got to stay healthy, but that fires me up. It really does. Talking about Rashawn Slater and reading Daniel Popper's article about him doing pass sets on the family cruise, that fired me up that day. And then, how lucky is Daniel Popper? He releases this great story about Rashawn Slater, and then just perfectly times up with the first day of pads, and Rashawn Slater looks dominant in practice. And then the entire day's read my story. And so it just cracked me up, and it fires me up talking about Rashawn Slater. Of course, everyone knows I'm an offensive line guy, but if Rashawn Slater is really playing at this kind of level already, he's going to be good. He's going to be that dude from day one. And of course we'll find out, almost instantly once he's going up against Chase Young and company. But it's just exciting to me, man. In case you can't tell.
It's going to be different this year, but let's bubble wrap Balaga's hand. Let's just do that.
Yeah, Brandon said he did say that it was just normal offensive line stuff, so he probably got one of his big fingers like stuck in a face mask or something like that.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
that's where you see those like Brian Baldinger, like his right ring finger is like going the opposite direction kind of thing.
Oh, Strahan's fingers are gross too.
Yeah,
it is gross, but yeah, this rookie class, man, it's exciting, and I know there was a lot of speculation about everything on Twitter, but it really feels like it's coming together for this group.
Yeah.
All right. So, guys, any other thoughts before we wrap up today's show?
It depends if you want to talk about the running backs or not.
Well, yeah, I kind of do want to talk about the running backs.
Okay, let's talk about the running backs then.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, no, we've been talking about kind of that running back rotation and how that's gone for, or how that was going to go, right? Whether they were going to keep 3, keep 4. So Tyler did cut Larry Roundtree in his latest roster projections. So, thank you for taking the hit. But I sort of do think we're at the point where I kind of do think they're going to keep all 4 running backs. I know a lot of the beat writers have said Justin Jackson is the guy to cut because he's an impending free agent, but like, I just think he's shown you too much over the years, and specifically in this training camp, with some of that explosion he showed, just that like he's not cuttable, right? Like Joshua Kelly cannot do what he does. Larry Roundtree, I don't think, can do what he does. And so that's just kind of where we are with it. But to me, and the risk of cutting Larry Roundtree or Joshua Kelly, of course, is that, another team picks them up and then suddenly, you wasted a draft pick, right? Particularly in the case of Joshua Kelly, a pretty high 4th round pick that came after they traded up for Kenneth Murray. So,
yeah.
To me, I think it's going to be 4. I know why people would predict it would be 3 either way. Steven cut Joshua Kelly, Tyler cut Larry Roundtree, but I'm gonna be the running back centrist. How about they all have fun and they all make the roster?
There you go. And Tyler did point out that Larry Roundtree is kind of, rotating more so with Darius Bradwell, which is unfortunate. I would like to see him get some more run, obviously, but I think if he's able to shine through in some preseason games, and same thing for Joshua Kelly, like they'll make their case. But I think it's either they cut Kelly or they keep 4. Like, I mean, Roundtree was a 6th round pick, and I get that, but I mean, they did just draft him. Like, and this coaching staff, like they have reportedly like shown throughout the stages, like they're going to keep whoever they think is the best player. But I have a hard time believing that they cut a player that they drafted this year. So if they do cut a running back, I do think it's going to be Kelly, but I think it seems it's more like that they keep all 4. And I know that everybody's kind of frustrated with Justin Jackson's ability to stay healthy or lack thereof, but he's just like so much better than the other guys. And Joe Lombardi's comments were pretty telling. Like he was talking about Austin Eckler and how well-rounded he thinks Eckler is and how excited he is to coach him. And then he was like, also, by the way, I feel the same way about Justin Jackson. Like he went out of his way to make sure that everybody knows that they like Jackson and they like his ability to, go out in routes and make plays in the screen game like they do with Eckler. So I think those two will be a fun 1-2 punch. We talked to Jeff Duncan about their, 21 personnel, the pony package, about how they use 2 running backs. And you get Eckler and Jackson on the field at the same time, you get a lot of options, right? You can motion one of them to like fake a jet sweep and then run a wheel route. The other one runs, kind of a flat route. Like you get some options there with that flexibility. And then we'll see what happens with like the kind of physical back between Roundtree and Kelly. But I mean, Jackson's making the roster. Like he's not getting cut.
Yeah. I totally get some of the arguments for cutting him. I understand that, but Justin Jackson, compared to the 2 running backs, Joshua Kelly and Kalen Ballage last year, was better than them in yards after contact per attempt, missed tackles forced per attempt, breakaway percentage, yards per route run, as well as receiving yards, yards per reception, yards after the catch per reception, missed tackles forced as a receiver, and passer rating when targeted. So I don't understand
significantly better too.
Yeah, no, and granted, it was Kelly and Ballage. Like I'm not saying that. Oh my gosh, Christian McCaffrey here, but like he was significantly better in almost every category compared to those guys. And you can't just cut that guy. And to me, when they're running their outside zone and that running back has to choose whether to bounce it outside or cut through the B gap or whatever, I think Jackson's running style, to work this offense, obviously he's trying to run north, but they work horizontally before they cut north or before they go north in the run game. I think Jackson just suits that so much better than, two guys that are just kind of 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And then you need that kind of guy. But, I'm just like, if you need a short yardage guy, let's say you absolutely need a short yardage guy, you got Herbert, you got Neighbors. Like, I do think you do have an opportunity to use those guys in some way where you don't need to keep 4 running backs. To me, it's just a giant waste. And there are so many other players. We didn't really talk about Anderson much, but I'd rather keep Steven Anderson. I'd rather keep that wide receiver 6. They might need to keep a 7th wide receiver considering all the injuries right now. And I just don't see the use, honestly, in keeping both running backs. And, even though they did just draft Roundtree, I've said this a billion times already, but they've cut a running back before in the same season they drafted him. But also, to them, yeah, they just drafted him, but they could also look at it as, well, we retained 8 rookies. They have 9 to pick from. And getting all 9 on the roster, how often do all 9 make it anyway? I get it's a new coach and there's a lot of turnover, but there are, like, if they cut Roundtree, they're still keeping 8. And Roundtree was, I believe, their second 6th round pick, right? So it's not even like it's their first 6th round pick. So, I get it. Like, I could totally see how my roster prediction would change and that they wouldn't be keeping Roundtree or both. I totally get that. But for right now, you're rotating with Darius Bradwell, who, Anthony Lynn tried as hard as he could to make him something, and nothing came of it. And he's still rotating with that guy. So, we'll see. But for right now, I'm going to cut one of them. And based on the reps, it's Roundtree.
Yeah, so I totally see kind of what you're saying there, right? And I totally agree. Like, they do the similar things, right? Like,
very similar
Kelly
players.
is more comparable to, right, very similar players. And you could just say, if I have to cut one, like, it would be one of those guys just because they're kind of redundant on the roster, I feel like, together. But, the alternative to that is, I think Justin Jackson is a free agent after this year, right? So do you want to spend another draft pick on a running back next year? And then, of course, Justin Jackson's health, as much as we don't want to talk about it, like, it is a thing, right? So if he does get hurt, would I rather have, the next man up or, try to just kind of plan around that, right? Because if you cut Larry Roundtree or if you cut Joshua Kelly, then, like, I don't know, who's your 4th running back? Like, Tremaine Pope? Are we bringing him back? Or are we, like, trying to, like, kind of rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic a little bit in that kind of scenario? So I definitely see what both of you are saying. I did want to finish on these 2 topics just because I think Steven forgot them and I have to be company man. The Chargers have sold 46,000 season tickets, and Phillip Rivers, come back or not come back?
Yeah, thank you for that. I forgot that we mentioned those in a separate text chain, so I took the one screenshot, forgot the second screenshot. But in terms of the season tickets, like, it's fantastic news, right? It's that they're able to, have their best month. I think in the release or whatever they sent out into the reporters, they said that this month, May of 2021 was the best ever in terms of season ticket sale. So, like, that's in of, like, fans showing up, Chargers fans showing up, you have to kind of wait and see. But LA and Justin Herbert and SoFi Chargers, well, they're running up. Like, this is kind of why we never really talked about family thing and suit and stuff like that. But this is why the Spanos family is not selling this team anytime soon. Like, the peak of the Chargers is right now. Like, it's barely starting in terms of financially speaking. So good for them. Like, like I said, we'll have to wait and see if that turns into actual Chargers fans showing up. And I know a lot of people are kind of scared for, like, the brokers and stuff like that. But I've said this before. I don't feel like the opposing fan turnout is going to be as bad. Obviously, I think the Cowboys and the Steelers will be kind of bad. But, I mean, they do that to every team. They don't do that to the LA teams. Like, it's every team that they do that to. So, but in general, I think that there will be a better Charger fan turnout this year. And I think that this season ticket sales is a sign of that.
Yeah, I honestly, whoopee. Like, I'm glad the season ticket sales are up, but who do they go to? If you told me exactly how many were Chargers fans, then it was better than normal. Great, but yeah, of course people are gonna buy season tickets to this thing. I mean, it's the greatest stadium in the country, or maybe possibly the world, and it's in Los Angeles, California. Like, people are going to want to pay to see this for business meetings, whatever it is. I'm actually kind of surprised they're not sold out, to be honest, but whatever, it is what it is. But yeah, show up, Chargers fans. I hope so. And as far as the Rivers thing, you know what? I'd love for him to have like a dadgummit package on the team where everybody runs to the left, but then he keeps the ball and goes to the right and just loses 5 yards. Like, I want him in the league on the team doing that. But Alex, what do you think if something happens to Hurts, he reunites with Sirianni at the Eagles?
Ooh.
Probably not, just because they have Flacco and Mullins there, so they'll probably take.
Flacco's an Eagle?
Yeah,
Flacco's there. Well, the
dude,
word that
Flacco's he like flat out said apparently that he's like, I'm gonna mentor Jalen Hurts. It's like, what are you there for then?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Flacco got really tired during the Lamar Jackson experience, and now he kind of has to do the same thing again. But I don't know. I wouldn't say Phillip Rivers is going to be there. I feel like Phillip Rivers would kind of go to like a very specific situation. Like, it would have to be, I don't know, like Tom Brady tears his ACL in like week 8, and they need some guy that they know can carry them over, like in that kind of way. Obviously, it doesn't have to be something that drastic, but it is like, okay, this quarterback is going to be out for the rest of the season, right? So this is still a playoff team, so let's try and get Phillip Rivers, right? Like, I think something like that could work. But it's tough with the salary cap, because to come back, he would basically kind of have to take like the minimum, like as like a backup, and then just come in that way. He's not getting 16 or 20 million or 25 like he got with the Colts in that last year. So that's not going to happen. As far as the season tickets thing, I think it's good, right? Just that they're having interest in the stadium and all that. Again, like Tyler said, we don't know how many of those people are like true Chargers fans, right? And how many people are just, LA businessmen being like, hey, well, I can buy these tickets and then resell them, right? So that is the tough thing with it. I've tried to Google it while we were doing the show, and I haven't been able to find an accurate Rams season tickets number. So that was what I wanted to know. I've seen in previous seasons it's been 15 and 25,000, but they were obviously playing in the LA Coliseum with those numbers. So the Chargers were playing in StubHub Center, which was fun for a while, and then Dignity Health Sports Park. But those days are over. So I think it's mostly excitement about the stadium. Obviously, there is some Herbert excitement, as we've seen at training camp. So I do think this team is going in the right direction. As far as like the fan takeover thing, that's just gonna happen, right? Like, I feel like people have to prepare themselves for that, because again, like the Chargers, Spanos, everybody in the organization has planned this as though it is a 15 or 20 year, kind of project to get more fans in the building, right? The kids and everybody that's growing up right now, like that's who they want to become Chargers fans and people in LA. So, I think that just has to be the reality. But the fact that they've sold out a bunch of them, I think that's good. And hopefully we don't see an empty Chargers Bengals game, that's kind of that nature, or, some of the stuff that we also saw at StubHub with fan takeovers. I don't think it'll be as bad. Also, just because StubHub was a trash stadium. I mean, it was it was fun to be there and be close to the field, but
it's different.
Right. It was different, and it was also limited seating, right? So, if a bunch of Raiders fans bought tickets, right, there was no answer, right? And because not a lot of Chargers fans had season tickets because it was the awkward transition phase. So I think in general, this football stadium really just works out really well for them. But again, we'll see how that progresses in the future with the Rams and how that kind of plays out with the city. But I think it'll be all right for the time being. And you know what? I hope Phillip Rivers comes back, as a coach. I want him to be, some guy that works himself up in the NFL. I know he's coaching high school right now. And, that's what he likes doing. And he's probably going to coach his kids whenever he gets the chance to. But I'd like to see him, be a coach in college one day or something like that. I feel like he'd be really good at that just with the type of personality he is.
Yeah, well, Chris Mortensen clarified today that he is focused on coaching his high school team. So if he does come back to the NFL, it would have to be like after the high school season is over. So that really would be like for really the home stretch. Like he finishes coaching probably like around Thanksgiving, and then if disaster strikes for a team, they can reach out to him, because this is how Rivers, like, you don't have to worry about him getting into shape or anything like that, because he can't move. So I would love to see him like be that night that saves the day kind of thing for a team. Like that would be really fun for his legacy. But also at the same time, like I think he should just move on. Like the last thing that I would want to see for him is like he coaches this high school team, signs with an NFL team, and then like they don't even make the playoffs, or like they lose in the wild card. Like I think at that point I would just rather say stay retired, coach your football team, and just kind of live out retirement. Like I don't want this to be a dragged on situation. So while I would love to see Rivers play some more, I think he probably should just move on at this point. I think if he wanted to really be in the NFL, then he could have stayed with the Colts. Like the Colts wanted him, but he retired. So I love him, one of my favorite players of all time, but I think he needs to be done.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He really killed the mood at the end of the show. I mean.
Sorry, man. I'm excited to see what he does as a coach.
Yeah,
I really am.
Absolutely.
He said that when he accepted that job as the head coach, he said that was like his lifelong dream was to be a high school football coach. So I think he's gonna be great at that. Like, imagine playing for Philip Rivers, dude. Like that would be so much fun. So I hope he does great in that. All right, guys. Any other thoughts before we actually wrap up today's show? Again, apologies for skipping those last two segments, but any other thoughts here?
Yeah, I think Philip Rivers is really a religious man at heart, because somehow the dream that he had was not the job where he made $20 million a year. So that would have been my dream. But no.
I don't know. What are they paying him in high school?
I assume they probably pay him maybe six figures.
I can't imagine it's six figures. I mean, it's in maybe. I know football is religion in Alabama, so I don't know what he's getting, but it's drastically more money to play in the NFL. But again, he really likes doing it. He's not doing this for the money, right? Like he has plenty of money to the point where he would never have to work again. But that's just the shrewd businessman in me that would like that money. So yeah.
Tyler, any thoughts, man?
No, I just realized that our audio version is going to be an hour and a half long. So if you're still here, kudos.
No, I just do have some things to chill. I've been writing for Bolt Beat, like I said, and if you feel like you haven't gotten enough of me on this podcast, I actually made an appearance on another podcast, so you can check that out on the Sixer Sense podcast. So you can listen to that on all podcast platforms and open up other apps and do all that shit, whatever. But I feel like you've had enough of me here, so don't do that, actually.
Well, I know there are at least two 76ers fans besides you that listen to this podcast. So the two of you definitely go check out Alex's appearance on that 76ers podcast.
2 downloads, baby.
There we go. But that's going to do it for us today, guys. We've got some fun episodes coming up. We're going to start our AFC West preview series. So we're going to try and get some podcasters or reporters to come on from those teams and kind of discuss the state of the division, which I'm really excited about. And then we'll have some more training camp coverage this weekend. Tyler is going to be in attendance this weekend for some practices, as well as Fan Fest. Wish I could be there, but unfortunately money does not grow on trees around here. So I hope everyone that goes to Fan Fest has a great time. Coach City said that they're going to have full-on scrimmage going. So that's going to be exciting. Hopefully all the Chargers players stay healthy, get some bubble wrap under those pads or something, and stay safe. So that's going to do it for us today, guys. Again, make sure and leave us a rating or review on the podcast platforms, and subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube. Thank you. We'll see you next time.